about some of the things that we've already discussed, but a little bit more in-depth review of those things that we've talked about. So we'll begin with the opening prayers, the altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dagla dangwa je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Tar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dang drel nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe shang ju brin po she to pa ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Te she du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Trin san sa wa dangur par je pe pal dan la ma dam pa nam la kyab su chi o. Yedam kil gor gi la sok nam la kyab su chi o. Sangye chom den de nam la kyab su chi o. Dam pe cho nam la kyab su chi o. Pa pe ge du nam la kyab su chi o. Pa wo ka jo cho kyong song me song ge she gi chang dang dem pa nam la kyab su chi o. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Shang Shu Ning Po Chi Ki Ba Sangye Nam La Kap Su Chi Chodang Shang Shu Sam Pa Yi So Klang De Shin Kap Su Chi Jitar Nongi De Shegi Shang Shu Tug Ni Ke Padang Shang Shu Sam Pe La Pa La De Dag Rim Shin E Patar De Shin Dro La Pandandu Shang Shu Sam Ni Ke Gi Shing De Shin Du Ni La Pa La Rinpa Shindu La Pa Ji O. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chodam La Shang Shu Bardu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Jin Soki Pe Sonam Gi Drola Penshi Sangye Ju Pa Sho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam gadam yam pesem centam she dewa dang dewe gudang dembar jurchi. Dug now dang dunao gi gudang drawa jurchi. Dug now me pe dewa dang midra wa jurchi. Ne ring jak dang ni dang drawe dang namla ne pa jurchi. Now we go to the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. We'll do twice in English and once in the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. And now we turn to page 12 to the Sagari Mati requested sutra. We recite in English. Likewise be extinguished. Extinguish all enemies to my purpose. Whatever evil forces are in me, be defeated. Do this so that when I am victorious, all pure radiance melts into me completely purified. Take all this knowledge, food, and drink peacefully. Enjoy it, and be satisfied so that all obstacles may be destroyed. Be liberated from all obstacles, all general obstacles. Maras are defeated by this gesture of the Buddha. By reciting this mantra, may all the Maras be purified. As a result, may all the Maras be defeated. Thank you very much. I'm sorry again for my throat. I've read that it's a very bad year for pollen in the air and so on, and together with all the smoke and all those other kinds of things that are in the atmosphere, I've had a terrible time keeping my throat clear. Nevertheless, I do use some medicine, but it helps a little bit, but not completely. So, does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about thus far? Talking about the five Buddha families, talking about the organization chart of the five Buddha families, the bodhisattvas, the male and female bodhisattvas, the gatekeepers. So today we're going to continue talking about the gatekeepers. I've had conversation with a number of people, you all, and it's come, that to try and organize, try and understand what are the things that we need to know. So the gatekeepers are really a function of remembering certain things that we should know. We should know them like the back of our hand, because they are the qualities or the activities or the notions of that which leads us to liberation. So the gatekeepers, if you remember, if you've got your mandala handy, you see that the gatekeepers are at each one of the four quadrants, and it's like a rectangular square figure, and you just visualize that it's like a doorway for us who are approaching the center of the mandala, that we go through these four doorways in order to purify all our confusions and our emotions and our preconceived ideas, our habitual tendencies. So we're purifying all them by moving in steadily in towards the center. The center represents our true nature. So the space quality, the Dharmakaya, the Buddha nature. So Um, so if no one has any questions, then I'm going to start talking about this. And I do need one thing here, so excuse me.
Sorry to be late, lads. I had technical issues this morning.
Well, okay, we're glad that you're with us now, Gary. Thank you very much. And, here we go. Here's what I needed. Okay, so we're talking about the mandala of the five Buddha families. So if you have that handy, you got that in front of you, will be very good. Talking about this right here. And so last week I introduced to you the idea of the four gatekeepers. Actually, it's 8 gatekeepers because there's a male and female gatekeeper from each one. And I want to point out to you something that's I think was interesting because some of the conversation that we had, maybe remember that the names of these particular deities and so on are less important. The names are less important than what these deities represent, what these enlightened beings represent. So when I was learning this years ago and so on, I would kind of put the names aside, but I would concentrate on the meaning. Then after a period of time of being able to be more and more familiar with the meaning and having a relationship with each of those meanings in my own personal life and so on, then I started engaging more into the names. And I found that the names became a shortcut to help remember, what these different qualities and activities are and so on. So the first thing would be to talk about these qualities. So we're not going to talk about the names unless somebody brings something up specifically. So it's more important to know the meaning. So if you have a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen or something and you can take notes, it's going to be very helpful because I don't have anything prepared to be able to give you all this information, but it's very important. And one of the other things that I've learned is that if we don't take our own notes and we don't make our own effort to do this thing, if it's all prepared for us, less of it sinks in. The act of taking notes and writing it down and thinking about it and so on commits us to a greater process of being able to make connections. And that's, of course, what we're always trying to do, is to make those connections. So the mandala, in the first place, is a structure that we observe, that we manifest for ourselves. We can use the name of a palace, we can use the name of a mansion or a house, but something like that. But it's a structure on which our spiritual growth is identified. We mark down, we can trace our spiritual journey. So this is done for us by the Buddha, who is showing us the five Buddha families, and we're seeing the structure of that. And this is our goal. This is what we want to see in our heart center. But as we approach that as individual human beings, ordinary human beings, who are on the path to become precious human beings, we have our own mandala. So we need to be able to recognize that and be able to identify the elements of the structures, the directions that they're facing, east, south, west, north. We need to be able to talk about the levels where they appear because it's a three-dimensional mandala. It's not just a two-dimensional, it's three-dimensional. So there's tiers to it. So we need to be able to identify that. So this is a work in progress of something that we're doing and thinking about more and more. And we might be out doing our everyday things and we have a good thought about what this is. And maybe we make a note to ourselves while we're in our car or in the office or wherever we might be. And then when we come home, we can translate that to whatever notes that we've been keeping at home. So recognize that this whole process is a continual process. It's not just when we're sitting here in these 2-hour sessions or when you're doing your meditation, but it's all the time. And we find that more and more as we do this, that it does become all the things that we think about. Everything that we do then has a characteristic that we can look at in terms of our spirituality. Okay, so this structure, we begin as we're approaching coming in. So we approach on the east side, and the east would be the blue side, the south would be the yellow, the west would be the red, and the green would be the north side. So the gatekeepers. So we need to talk about the gatekeepers. So one thing that we're already familiar with are the 4 immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. So this represents loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So the gatekeepers are asking the question, well, if you want to come into the center, you're more than welcome, but you need to have at least a strong familiarity, if not a complete knowledge, a complete experience with bodhicitta. So the gatekeeper is asking us, what are the 4 qualities of the 4 vast qualities of bodhicitta? So in the East, the quality is compassion. So you might want to write that down. In the East, the quality is compassion that is being requested. In the South, the quality is loving kindness. And in the West, the quality is empathetic joy. And the quality in the North is equanimity. So this becomes an exercise for us to be able to picture and think about why this is true. The blue family is the Vajra family. We talked about that, the Vajra family. So the Vajra is the indestructible wisdom. So the Vajra is symbolized by the Dorje, the Vajra that we hold when we have the bell and so on. And it represents indestructibility. So in the Vajra family, the compassion is part of that family. And loving kindness is part of the Ratna family, the jewel family, which is in the south, the yellow family. So why is loving kindness in the jewel family? And then in the west is the empathetic joy, and the empathetic joy in the red family is the Padma family, the lotus family. So why is it there? And then last would be, why is equanimity, the last of the 4 qualities, why is equanimity in the karma family? The green family is the karma family. Why is it in the karma family? So this is part of the exercise. There's myriad reasons. There's lots of reasons, and there's going to be different reasons that you're going to think of different times of the day or different times of the year, but we see that it's all connected. It's all mutually connected. So by being mindful of this is how we make all these connections. You see, we become intellectually aware of all these connections that are within our true nature. So the four immeasurables are one of the things that we need to know in order to be able to approach the gatekeeper and to allow the gatekeeper to open the doors for us, so to speak, symbolically. Another thing that is with the gatekeepers are the four types of birth. I don't know if we've talked much about this. I don't think we have, but there's four different types of birth that sentient beings go through. So, of course, sentient beings are beings that have a lifetime, they have a birth, they're susceptible to sickness, disease, or injury. They have a death. They go through a period of dying, and they go through a period of old age. They begin to decay as they get older and older, and so on, and that leads to their ultimate death. So these are four qualities, four characteristics of sentient beings. So human beings are sentient beings, animals are sentient beings, insects are sentient beings. There's subterranean sentient beings that we don't see. There's sentient beings that are in the atmosphere that we don't recognize. So there are myriad ways in which sentient beings manifest, but they all go through these four qualities, so we can examine them and think about that. So the question then becomes, well, how are they born? So we are born in a womb. So we're mammals, we understand that. So there's a typical womb birth. And of course, the womb birth is the preferred way to be born, to become a human being. But now there is also an egg birth, born of an egg. So like reptiles, birds are born of eggs. And they have very limited intelligence. They're able to do certain things and so on. They're sentient beings, and they have fears, and they have protection, and they have certain qualities of devotion to their offspring. And so there's many qualities that we share with them. We can even say emotional qualities that we share with them. But to be born in an egg birth, can also mean that we're slimy, crawlers, like other kinds of snakes and things like that, all born of the egg. So egg birth. Then the next one would be heat and moisture. So heat and moisture would be indicative of larvae that might be collecting in a stagnant pond, water that's very slow moving in a warm region, someplace off the land, maybe in a swampy thing or something like that. And the insects that lay the eggs there, or larvae in there, and through the heat of the decomposition of the vegetation that is nearby, creates the heat for that larvae, and then finally they hatch and they become the insects that then swim about in the water, and then some have wings and begin to fly and so on like that. So there is the heat and moisture birth that that sentient beings can go through. And if we look and we see the way the human beings and what we know scientifically about how we develop in the womb, that we go through these different stages of gestation. as we become the zygote, and the zygote becomes the fetus, and so on like that. We go through these kinds of stages. So it's showing how human beings are part of an evolution of sentient beings on this planet as we know it. So those are three forms of birth. The fourth one is a miraculous birth. Now, the miraculous birth is, of course, very interesting just by the name miraculous. What does this mean? So this is a real transformation. This is a real transformation, a miraculous transformation. How does this occur? So one of these transformations can be that we are born as a human being from a womb. But then we use symbolically the image that we want to be born from a lotus, that we want to purify ourselves and be born from a lotus. So when we do our meditations, we are going through a transformation. We have the opportunity, at least, to have the opportunity to be reborn, that we're going through a death, we're entering the meditation, we enjoy the meditation, and then we come out of the meditation and we're reborn now, still as a human being, but from the benefits of having an experience during that meditation time. So symbolically, that is like a miraculous birth. That is like being born from a lotus. We all know the symbology of the lotus, that it comes from a defilement. It comes from the bottom of a pond, a stagnant pond or slow-moving water pond, and from that filth comes the stem, and the lotus blossoms above the water line and is pure, and so on, represents that purity. So as we go through that meditation, there is a purification that had to take place to get to that point. And then being able to take that purification into the next life, it becomes that symbolic lotus birth. So it's like a miraculous birth. We talk about that when we actually die, when we give up our physical body, and our intellectual mind goes with our physical body, but our spirit is released. And then it goes and goes into the bardos, which we'll talk about one day, the intermediate state that we go through. And if we can remain there, that's magnificent. And there's a miraculous occurrence that happens there. But more important, more to the point of what we're talking about here, is if we're not pure enough to remain in that Buddha field, and we have to come back to be born again in a body, as a human being, or one of these other bodies, there's a miraculous transformation that takes place. So that's indicative of that. And we talk about that if we are born as a bodhisattva or a Buddha, that when we are born again as a human being for the benefit of the enlightenment of other beings, then that is a miraculous birth. We are said that we are born from a lotus. So sometimes you will hear it said that the lotus is representative of the womb itself. So there's many different ways of looking at this, being able to see this miraculous birth. So this is all very positive, to have this positive birth in these ways that I was just explaining. But there also can be a miraculous birth where through our negative karma behavior, our conduct, that miraculously we are born into the lower realms, that we are born into the hell realm, or we're born into the hungry ghost realm, or born into an animal realm. So this can happen too, and this is a miraculous birth. How does this happen? Through this great spiritual transformation that this happens. So we have to be able to consider that. We need to understand that. We need to visualize that through our practices. So as we go through different practices, as we read different books, as we hear different teachings and so on, we're learning more about these things. And so these four types of birth are very important for us to be able to recognize. So now making it relative to this mandala that we have, that the miraculous birth is in the same Vajra Vajra family as the compassion. This is the miraculous birth, is in that family. Why? Thinking about that, thinking about the miraculous birth, thinking about compassion, thinking about the Vajra family all together, then starts giving us, connection points, critical thinking about how this all works. Then we go to the Ratna family, the jewel family, and there is the birth of the womb birth, born of the womb. And there was the loving kindness of bodhicitta. So why is that connection there? In the Ratna family, the earth family, thinking about that, contemplating that. Then we go to the Padma family, the red family, and we look and we see that this is the egg birth. This is where the egg birth manifests. Why is that? And why is that associated with the empathetic joy of bodhicitta? Being able to think about that, the Padma family, the lotus family. Padma means lotus. So we think about that. And then we go to the green family, or the karma family, and the heat and moisture is indicative of being born in that realm, or I shouldn't say it that way, is indicative of being contemplated in that doorway, at that gateway, and along with equanimity. Equanimity, the quality of equanimity of bodhicitta in that same quadrant, in the karma family. So now we're putting more and more things together. This is how our meditation contemplation begins to take on more meaning. We're bringing more things into our critical thinking mind, into our intellectual mind. We're thinking about why these things are happening and so on. We're saying, here's what it is. We're thinking of why it is. And then we have to think, well, how does this manifest? How does this happen? What, why, and how? So this is all part of the process. So it's giving us more things to be able to contemplate, more things to be able to release through an experience and release through our meditations. So this is part of the process. Any questions or comments so far? Okay.
Lance?
Yes, Gary. Yes, Gary.
This, I don't know if this is frivolous or not, but I was thinking as I listened to you talk about all of the variations of sentient beings and how wide the scope of sentient beings are, and you were talking about viruses and water, and we are not supposed to kill sentient beings, if I understand. But when we purify our water, we do exactly that, don't we?
Well, we have to look at things on the basis of a higher purpose.
Okay.
And we also have to look at, as we are transforming some of these things, that they are being transformed to a higher purpose themselves.
Okay.
So to look at it from that perspective, and if we're not doing it maliciously for the sake of just the killing or the enjoyment of the killing, but to be able to preserve our our life in a way, and that we are the sum total of all these things happening within us. I mean, we have all these germs within ourselves, all this bacteria within ourselves, all this viruses within us, and so on. And when our physical body dies, then all these things have a feast, don't they? They have a feast on our body. So it's another thing to put into the crucible of thought, of contemplation and meditation. So not only are these animate objects, these sentient beings, but also the atoms, the molecules, the elements, and so on are inanimate, but they are shared by the whole cosmos. Of that we know. Whether these organic sentient beings exist beyond this planet, we can only theorize at this point. But we know that we are a composite of all these things that are shared by the entire cosmos. Okay. So I hope that answers the question to some degree, at least to start your own, research on that and thought about that. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So continuing to manifest this structure, as we enter into this, if I can just use this very loose analogy, we're kind of like an amoeba. We have no structure. Our structure is just very morphic, it just oozes around and so on like that. But now we've gotten to this point of organization, being a human being, where we can organize our life, our lifestyle. We have our houses, we got all our things around us and so on. But now we're organizing our thoughts. We're organizing our intellect, and we're organizing our spirituality. We're being able to identify our spirituality through the structures that we're creating. So these are very important elements. Without these structures, we're just this morphic thing that's moving about that doesn't know where it is, why it is there, and how it got there. So, so we're putting together these symbolic ideas, these concepts to help us to identify this. Is this absolutely true? Or is this empty? Is this emptiness? Is this all a stack of aggregates of things that we have thought of, concepts that we've thought of to help us to understand who we are, what's going on around us? But it's all relative. So this is all phenomenal nature that we're doing this with. And this is within the absolute. This is the display of the absolute. But the absolute we can't identify. We can't recognize as an ordinary human being. We have to be able to transcend our ordinary humanness to be able to have that transcendent experience of the absolute. But even then, it's unqualifiable or unquantifiable. It's inexpressible. So we're able to see this phenomenal nature as a display of that, but it is a display that is empty of its own nature. It's like a rainbow. It's the illusory body. So keeping these things in mind, keeping this perspective is very important, because ultimately what we're trying to do is to let go of all of this, to be free. We're not going to live forever. We talked on Monday night, we talked about impermanence. And we talked about all the different ways in which we can look at impermanence. So this is giving us an understanding of what's impermanent, why we think it's permanent, and so on. Andy has his hand up. Yes, Andy.
Hi, Lance. I don't want to get ahead of you because I know you've got a plan, but I had a question. As I understand it, the gatekeepers, they're connected to the Zahum Bamho mantra. And seeing as they're the gatekeepers, I just wondered at the point in the sadhana, I think there was one a few weeks back where you demonstrated Zahum Bamho. Is that the point where the mandala actually kind of is completed, or because they're like the outer they're the outer ring of the mandala, aren't they?
Well, the Zahong Bamho isn't limited to just the gatekeepers. It could be, there are different practices that it's applied in many different practices: peaceful deity practices, wrathful deity practices, or the Dharma protectors, or the hero awareness holders. There's a variety of things, and it depends on the practice. So there's so many different practices. So I wouldn't say that it is exclusively connected to the Zahong Bamho. So Zahong Bamho, if you remember, for everybody's benefit, we talked about Za, hooking to the deity, the enlightened one. Zahong, tying ourselves up with a rope to the deity, to the enlightened one. Zahong Bam, to the chaining ourselves, locking ourselves up with the enlightened one. And then Ho was the celebration of that, the completion of that, and being happy, the rejoicing of being connected with the deity. So that's what Andy's asking about: Za Hong Bam Ho. So so you could say that Za Hong Bam Ho can certainly be used for the gatekeepers, but it's within ourselves, and it doesn't necessarily have to have this anthropomorphic reality associated with it. The anthropomorphic illustrations are just a means for us to be able to remember the things that we're talking about now, what I'm trying to give you identification with today. So the first was bodhicitta, the second was the 4 types of birth. So we still have a couple more to go. So I hope that answers the question, to say that it all depends.
Thanks, Lance. I think it was just because I saw it was called the mantra of the gatekeepers. It kind of made me think it was specific to them. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's all connected. Somewhere along the line, it's all connected. All right. So then, continuing on. So now we come to another set of to what we just went through. If you want to qualify this, what we just went through with the bodhicitta and the 4 types of birth are part of the female gatekeeper. The gatekeepers, there's a female gatekeeper and there's a male gatekeeper. So the female gatekeeper always, or the female aspect, the feminine aspect, always has a wisdom connotation to it. So what we just went through was wisdom. So now we're going to go to the male gatekeeper, and the male gatekeeper is skillful means or method. And remember, and these gatekeepers are like in a dancing posture. They're holding together in a dance. So you can think of our experience in the world as a dance. That we are dancing about. We're trying to maintain a balance. we're trying to follow a certain choreography of virtue. But sometimes we have a misstep and we fall out of balance. And we need to be able to recover from that balance. How do we recover from the misbalance, from the misstep? By incorporating it into our dance. And our dance becomes a little bit more intricate, becomes a little bit more involved, and being able to absorb the vicissitudes, the changes that happen in our lives. So all this is within the gatekeeper. Okay, so we talked about the wisdom, feminine aspect. Now we talk about the method, or the skillful means aspect. So the first thing that we talk about with the male are the 4 enlightened activities. Now, we may have talked about this once or twice before, but I know we didn't talk about it at length, but now we're going to talk about a little bit more. So the 4 enlightened activities, you might have seen reference to these many times in prayers and practices, the 4 enlightened activities. So the 4 enlightened activities are, number 1 is pacification. The activity of pacification. The enlightened activity of pacification. When we have trouble, when we have something, some non-virtue, when we have confusion, whatever it is, the first thing that we want to use to be able to bring it in, to be able to neutralize it, is simple pacification. Oh, you're okay. Patting you on the back. Oh, everything's all right. Let me give you a hug. You know, all the things that we do to pacify, you know, other beings, to pacify ourselves, that we look for when we meet some kind of trouble or sometimes of confusion. We want to pacify it. We want to calm it down. Okay? The second thing, if that doesn't work, if that pacification didn't completely work, then the next enlightened activity would be enrichment, or the word increasing. We would want to understand more about what it is, what the cause of it is, how is it that the pacification didn't work for it, what more can I do, how is it interconnected to other things. I want to increase, I want to know more about what this is. I want to enrich my knowledge. I want to enrich my skillful means, my method, with this enlightened activity of whatever that notion is that is disturbing or the potential of disturbing. So enrichment is the second activity. The third activity is magnetizing. Magnetizing by bringing this in, bringing this into ourselves, to that we have this quality of virtue, we have this quality of experience to get to this point and so on. So this non-virtue, this confusion, whatever it is that you want to call it, we want to bring it into us. So we're not going out to it as much as we're bringing it in. We're enticing it. We're magnetizing it to come to us so that it can be neutralized. So this is the third enlightened activity of magnetizing. Then the fourth one is subduing or challenging. Subduing, challenging, where this thing, this object of the mind, whatever it is very stubborn, very negative, very confusing, but we need to be able to subdue it. So we need to be a little bit more forceful, a little bit more aggressive, not to thinking that we are angry about this, that the mode in which we're operating with all of this is, is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is being utilized for all of these activities. So loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. There's no hatred. There's no anger. There's nothing like that. But so we're trying to now approach this difficulty with a subduing attitude, with a challenging attitude, that I'm going to be able to successfully overcome, subdue, and neutralize this object that is disturbing, at the very least. So these 4 activities then are associated with the 4 quadrants. So the Vajra family is the family of the pacification, the Vajra family. The Ratna family, the family of the earth, the yellow family, is the family of enriching. So you can make associations with this, enriching, like the jewel, enriching, the products of the earth. The earth itself is very enriching. It's got all the nutrients, it's got all the elements, everything that we need to be able to live, to sustain life and so on. And the pacification from the Vajra family is that indestructible wisdom, that indestructible skillful means, that indestructibility then is being used for this pacification. That I can approach this with absolutely no fear that I'm going to lose my power, my indestructible wisdom, my indestructible skillful means. And with that, I'm going to pacify this with no fear of losing my strength. But as I said, there might be situations where we need to go to the next step, which would be the enrichment, the earth. Then there are cases when that's not working. And then we have to go to the next quadrant, which would be the lotus family, and that would be the subduing. And the subduing would be indicative of the fire, the element of fire of the Padma family, to subdue. So, and fire, what does fire do? What is fire basically doing? It's transforming. It's releasing energy. It's taking something that is capable of combustion and it is transforming it into releasing heat and light and then leaving behind a residue of ashes. There's a total transformation. Those ashes are unrecognizable as to what that was before it was born, or rather before it was burned, I should say. So that is subduing, bringing it in and neutralizing, subduing. Then when that doesn't work, and this object of the mind, if you will, is so powerful, so strong, that we have to we have to go and we have to dig it out. We have to challenge it. We have to confront it. We have to subdue. Oh, excuse me, my bad. The magnetizing was the fire. Excuse me, magnetizing was the fire. Sorry about that. Magnetizing was the fire. We're bringing it in and then consuming it through the neutralization of the fire. The subduing is now going in the karma family, is subduing this through our great power, through our great devotion, through our sense of equanimity, because the bodhicitta here is equanimity. We're using bodhicitta in all these things, but particularly in this karma family is equanimity. So through the sameness, through the visualizing the sameness, are we able to subdue this this object of confusion, this object of negativity? Is that making some sense? Can you relate to this in any way? Okay. So again, this is something that we need to become familiar with like the back of our hand. If we don't understand these principles, you say, it's going to be very difficult for us to remain stable as we move further into the mandala, deeper into the mandala. Another way of saying it, that as we are manifesting our own mandala, the mandala is going to be on a weak foundation if it doesn't understand these basic principles. So this becomes fuel, this becomes more object for our contemplations, for our meditations. So some deity yoga helps us with this. Sometimes it's just a particular book, or sometimes it's just the raw, having the mandala to look at, and then having these other illustrations that we've filled in order for us to be able to recall these teachings, these explanations, these introductions, so that we can all cultivate our own critical thinking. This is what's necessary. It's not that Lance said this, or it's not that the Buddha said this, or any of the lamas said this. It's that I was introduced to this, but now I've discovered these things for myself. I have found these things for myself. I have tested these things myself.
So, Lance, would you say that one of the main, I guess, like purposes or functions of this is for a practitioner to organize their understanding of the path? Is that like a primary function of the mandala?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's a perfect way of saying it. Yes.
That was something I was, thinking after our last one was like trying to figure out like what, like the why behind this, like what is this, what is the reason that the tradition has like developed this, or this is developed, like what is this, like what's the purpose of this exactly, that I wasn't clear on. I guess that part of it, and wondering too like how exactly it fits into practice, which I'm sure you'll get into more, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. That's exactly right. Here we are, we're on this ground, and we've got all this information, we've got all this potential, but we need a pathway to be able to structure it, to organize it, to understand it. So whether it's raising a family, whether it's having a particular job that we have, those are examples of how we are moving along our life to do these certain things, to achieve a good, happy family, to achieve a good career for ourselves. We have to adopt a structure in which we do this. Well, the same thing is true with our spirituality. So whether we use Buddhist philosophy to help us do it, or we use Christianity to help us do it, or we use Jewish doctrine to help us do it, Hebrew, or we use Indian Hindu philosophy, or Taoism, or whatever, Islamic, they're all valid points that have an organizational structure to understand spirituality. They have a pathway to do this. For us, the Buddhism is very articulate. It's very clear. Once we take out the names, because I think we have a tendency, to get hung on the names. And but if we take away the names for the time being and just look at the meaning behind the names, then it's much easier for us here in the West anyway. We can add the names later if we want to. We don't even have to. But this gives us the means, you see. This gives us the meaning. By understanding the meaning, now you can have a conversation with your Christian friends. You can have a conversation with your Hebrew friends, or with your Hindu or Islamic friends, because they're talking about the same things in their way of talking about it. They have their reference points, but the meanings are the same. So this is a beautiful part of being able to do that. So the gatekeepers, you see, are opening us up to this conversation that now we're having with ourselves.
Lance, the connections between the four immeasurables and the four activities are really, really helpful. They just seem really logical, and I think the four immeasurables can seem quite abstract sometimes, and looking at the connection with the activities, I can kind of really see what they look like kind of in practice. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. The four activities, the four immeasurables are the mode in which we approach everything. These are the four immeasurable qualities of all the enlightened beings. So we see that there's limitless ways in which this is interacted with. Okay, so now we move to this next group of the four extremes. So this is part of the male gatekeeper in each one of these houses that we've been talking about. So first we just talked about the enlightened activities. Now we're going to talk about the extremes, because we are dualistic beings. Dualism means two, and being pulled from one pole to the next pole, and where we fit in this. And the important thing that was taught by the Buddha, and which has been maintained by all the Buddhist masters who have come through their own realization, is that it's the middle way through these extremes that we're able to manage our lives without being pulled to one extreme or the other. Being a human being automatically implies our dualistic nature. It's part of who we are. We're not going to annihilate it. So the best that we can do then is educate ourselves, enrich ourselves, to use the activities. So we can't just pacify it, we need to enrich it in order that we can magnetize and subdue the doubts and the questions and the concerns that we have and so on. So it's through this enrichment process that we do this. So we have to identify, well, what are these extremes? So usually when we refer to the two extremes, they're referring to the extreme of nihilism on one side and the extreme of eternalism on the other side. So nihilism, I think, represents nothingness, that everything is just chaotic, nothing has a purpose. We can create a purpose, we can create a structure for that, but in essence, it is nothing. So this nihilism, Buddhism teachings kind of knock on the door, because we talk about that all this is emptiness, all this is preconceived ideas and so on like that. And some people may go to the logical conclusion, well, this is nihilism. But it's not that, because we are part of, there is a miraculous rebirth that we are part of, that we are subject to, that we have been able to use in order to evolve as human beings and to continue to evolve as human beings. So the nihilism says, why bother? It doesn't matter. So it's a total disregard for our life as a stepping stone, as a process. So there may be other ways to explain nihilism better than I can do, but we can talk about that. But you can look it up. The purpose of this conversation, the purpose of this extreme, is to identify it, is to look at it, is to examine it. Don't take it for granted. You know, what I just gave is a very short, limited explanation, but there's much more to it, I'm sure. So engage in your own investigation. On the other side of this extreme of nihilism is the extreme of eternalism. Eternalism is everything's going to be okay. Everything is being taken care of for us. The great power in the sky is going to take care of everything. We don't have to worry. We're going to be forgiven. Everything is cool. This eternalism, that no matter what we do, we are always going to persevere. We are always going to live because of this intervention of this divine nature that we are all part of, and this divinity is what controls everything. So this divinity can be within us. It's saying, oh, you are a divine being. And it's a way to explain something, you know, the spirituality. But we have to recall that what we are going for is the middle way. The middle way between this nihilism and this eternalism. So there's a truth on both sides, and there's a falsity on both sides. Or maybe it would be better to say there's a trap on both sides. So there's something to be experienced by understanding, by studying nihilism, just as there is on the side of spiritualism. But in both cases, there is a trap if we get caught too heavy into one extreme or the other. We begin to lose our focus. We get trapped. We get ensnared into that extreme view. Is this making some sense? Okay. So now we can say on the other axis, if the one axis we were just saying is like a horizontal line, now there's this other line, like this cross, if you will, just for sake of visualization, is the two other extremes. The extreme of individualism or egoism. This is saying, I am the most important. I am. It is me. It is mine. I am. That is what is important. The individualism, the egoism, that I need to win. I need to be the leader. I know. All these things that are, we are at the center of all things. I am, the individualism, and that we may be a collection of individuals who may come together in order to further our individual goals. In other words, we're making alliances and friendships and so on with like-minded people in order that each of us as individuals can reach our individual potential. So this is egoism, individualism. There is a natural survival instinct. There is an awareness of ourselves, but also there is a trap there for us that we are all familiar with and that we're trying to break free of. And we are not able to destroy our individualism. We're not able to destroy our ego. But what we can do is reprogram it. We can control it. We can understand what it is, why it is, and how it works. And by knowing those three things, we can give it a job to do that is not going to be so extreme, that is going to enable us to be able to work and survive in society. So in Buddhism, everything we do is for the benefit of other beings. So this helps us to break through our egoism, our individualism, that everything I'm going to do is going to be dedicated for the benefit of others. On the other side of that egoism, of that individualism, is substantialism, or materialism. I can pronounce that better. Materialism is that all these things are here, or we have all these objects, and they're here for us. They're here for me. And that the winner is the one who has all those things. That I succeed by having all these things, by being able to control all these things, all this substantial stuff, all this material stuff. So on one axis is the individual, and the other side is all this stuff, is all this multiplicity, is all this phenomenal stuff, and so on. All these objects of wealth, wealth of knowledge, wealth of money, finances, whatever you want to call it. So that dynamic there, and what we need to recognize is to be in the middle of that, the middle way. The middle way has many ways to explain it. And this is a very simple way to explain it in the beginning. There's much more to it that we'll get to, and that you'll get to as you continue your studies with the Mahayana path. But right now, it's just a means to be able to begin the conversation, to get yourself in the doorway of the gateway keepers, of the gatekeepers. So now to put it in terms of the gatekeepers themselves, in the East, or the blue family, the Vajra family, is the extreme of eternalism. The extreme of eternalism. And this is interesting from this one point of view. There's going to be many, but the Vajra family overcomes hatred, overcomes aggression. And in the lifetime of human beings, what might be the greatest cause for hatred and aggression is eternalism. Oh, my religion's better than your religion, and I'm going to kill you to protect my right to have my religion. So how many wars have been fought over that kind of a notion? So this eternalism being in this same quadrant as the compassion, as the miraculous birth of the pacification, there's a certain symmetry to that, I think. So then we go to the yellow family or the Ratna family, and there the extreme is nihilism. Nihilism in the Ratna family, that here's the earth, all this stuff, it's just all temporary. It doesn't mean anything, and I can get as much of it as I want, and with no, I don't have to worry about some other retribution by a supreme being or something like that. In nihilism, there's no sense of a divinity or a supreme being. The only reason I stop killing people or stealing people is that you're going to put me in jail. So out of being fearful of being put in jail, I will develop a morality. But that's the only reason. I don't have a personal morality to be able to say, if I do this, I've committed a sin. There's no sin in nihilism. So then we go to the Padma family, the red family, and here is the extreme of egoism or individualism. I, me, mine. This Padma family. I, me, mine is so. If we begin to think of ourselves as all these divine beings, every one of us has our own divinity, every one of us has our own religion and so on. I mean, from one point of view, that's very good. Then we can say that in a way that's kind of what we do. We may have affiliations with traditions and so on, but it's speaking of it individually and not collectively as a social group. And that's the trap of the individualism. So within the Padma family is the empathetic joy of the bodhicitta. So the empathetic joy really means being able to see yourself in other beings, being able to see your virtue, being able to see your goodness in other beings, and not believing or not thinking that you had anything to do with that you were the cause of that or anything, or being attached to that. So this empathetic joy speaks to this egoism by saying, we all have this potential, and I rejoice that we all have this potential. And let it, at that point, just kind of let it go and not think, my potential is better than your potential. So then the last of these is the the extreme of materialism. So this materialism or substantialism is all these things, all these objects, all this phenomenal nature is ours to have, is our possession. That we can control all this, that we need to control all of this, and so on. And then, so the equanimity of bodhicitta is in this same family, this karma family. The karma family. What does karma represent? What does karma mean in English language? It means action. So all these things in here, can be traps for further karma, or they can be the identification of the causes of karma and the results of the karma, and thereby can be the release of the karma, the letting go, the liberation of the karma. So these gatekeepers are referred to as emanation gatekeepers. What they are emanating is the wisdom and compassion of their families, of their root families, that they are part of, the Vajra family, the Ratna family, the Padma family, and the Karma family. And that we've already discussed who are the heads of those families. Ascobia, Ratnasambhava, Amitabha, Amagog City, and their consorts. But again, we don't have to get hung up on the names, but what is their function? What is their meaning? To align ourselves with the meaning, to study the meaning of all these enlightened ones. So the gatekeepers, I said in the beginning, they're a doorway for us to get into the center of the mandala. Okay? And they are there to question us, to say, well, what do you know about these things? What experience have you had with these things that we've just talked about? And I'm not going to prevent you from going further in. You're going to want to be able to have mastered these things in order to go in, so that you have a firm understanding of what it is to be inside. That when the vicissitudes of life come, that you're unshaken by them, that you're stable in them, and so on. So this is as we approach the center. That's from the bottom up. But we also can experience this from the top down. And this is something that we've done over and over and over again, each time that we have been reborn and that we have died. When we die, when we give up our physical body, we give up our intellectual brain, but our spirituality is released. The spirituality released is indestructible. And so we have attained this level because that's who we are. This is our true nature. The spirituality is our true life. It's not a question of attaining it. It's a question of being able to recognize it. It's there already. So when all this other stuff goes away, now we're just naked spirituality. So from the top down, so if we look at that from the top down, now the question becomes, are we prepared to remain as a holy enlightened one? Or have we more work to do? And therefore we have to become again a body, go through this process of further purification and so on, further experience. As we do that, now we're coming back through the gates. We're experiencing the gatekeepers again. And the gatekeepers can say, oh, you need to remain as a Buddha. You need to remain as your true nature. And if we're not capable of doing that, then the gatekeeper can say, well, remember your training. Remember, as you go out into the world, as you go out and become another being, remember these things. And then we go further into the process of being born again. Egg birth, womb birth, heat and moisture birth, miraculous birth. Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions before we take a break? Zara, I see you turn your microphone on, but we can't hear you if you're saying something. Oh, she's trying to reconnect. There she is. Zara, were you trying to say something? No, okay. All right. So has this helped? I mean, is this
I think the invitation to ease up on, for us to ease up on the focus on the names has been helpful for me, and kind of in understanding it. Yeah, and realizing for myself, like I just need to sit with over time and see how it fits into things. I did notice, like, when first learning more about it, I noticed I felt very critical of it in my mind. Not like the way you were teaching it, but just like overall, like why would this? It just seems so overcomplicated. Like But I think I need to just, yeah, I just need to keep sitting with it and see how it does fit in. And there's like a certain arrogance I've realized to my mind, like as if I, on first hearing about it, could, you know, see some flaw in it or something. But yeah, I feel more and more comfortable with it and trying to see how it fits into things, something like that.
yeah, you see all these issues as being human issues. So being able to structure this in a way that works for us rather than against us is what we need to do. Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, then, what I'd like to do is take a break and come back and do a practice as we've been doing. And today we'll do the Vajrasattva practice again. The reason why the Vajrasattva practice, because he is the purification through confession. And we have all fallen into all these different traps in one way or another. So our being able to recognize that, to be able to recognize the indestructible nature that we have within ourselves, that we can confess to ourselves, this is very liberating. So this is a perfect deity yoga practice to do with this level of introduction of the doctrine of understanding who we are as human beings. Okay? So if you've got your Vajrasattva sadhana practice handy, that's what we'll be coming back to. And then if you got your beads, so you can use your beads, we'll do the hand mudras, we'll do the whole practice and do at least a mala recitation of the mantra. Okay, so what time do we have? So we'll come back at the top of the hour. So for us here, it'll be 11 o'clock, wherever you are at your time zone. If you can join us at the top of the hour, will be wonderful. If you're back with us, you're back with us. Thank you very much for joining again. And so we're going to do the Vajrasattva practice. Does anybody have any questions, though, or comments about what we talked about earlier? Okay. All right. So then we need to do opening. We'll just do the short refuge prayer. So whichever book you have, we'll recite that twice in English, once in Tibet, and then we'll continue on with the Vajrasattva practice. We'll only do we'll recite the visualization, etc., in English. But when it comes time to do the praise and the offerings and the mantra itself, we'll do that in the Sanskrit or Tibetan, whichever necessary. And so we don't have to do all the instructional visualization stuff in Tibet. You can do that in English. So we begin with the refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam la, shangju bardu dagni kapsu chi, dagi jinso ki pe sonam gi, drola penshi sangye ju pasho. Okay, so we remember that the Vajrasattva practice is based on the 4 powers. The power of remorse for the negative deeds that we have done, the power of remedy or antidote for the antidote, the remedy for those negativities that we do, the resolve not to do them again, and the reliance on the practice to help us stabilize in virtue so that we maintain good moral ethics and not do negative things again. So those are the 4 powers: remorse, remedy, resolve, and reliance. So now we recite the visualization together. Above the crown of my head, I visualize a white lotus with a moon disk seat. On the moon disk is a white syllable hung, which transforms into a vajra with a hung in its center. White light radiates from this hung, purifying the obscuration of all beings. This light is offered to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The light returns and dissolves into the seed syllable hung. The hung then transforms into Vajrasattva, who is in essence our own kind root Lama. Vajrasattva is white in color and holds a Vajra and bell. He sits gracefully in the half-lotus position. He wears silken robes and all the precious ornaments. And we make the offerings. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Argam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Padyam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Pushpam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Dupam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Alokam Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Gande Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Nuidaya Pratitsa Soha. Om Vajra Sattva Saparivara Shapta Pratitsa Soha. Vajrasattva Mahasattva, the great mind, the embodiment of all the Buddhas, the Samantabhadra Dharmakaya, I prostrate to you, holder of the Vajra. In Tibet, Dorje Sampa Sampache, Dorje Shingpa Kun, Dorje Dangpo Kontu Zang, Chaksal Chana Dorje Lao. At Vajrasattva's heart level is a Vajra on a moon disk. At the center of the Vajra is a Hung syllable surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra circling to the right. The light radiates from the rotating mantra, completely purifies the obscurations of all beings, and they become Vajrasattva. The light returns and dissolves into the mantra of the seed syllable Hung. Nectar produced from these syllables flows through the right great toe of Vajrasattva. It enters the crown of my head, washing out all defilements, illnesses, and obscurations through the pores of my skin and the 2 lower openings of my body. These obscurations leave the body in the form of a smoky, dark liquid. Then I am filled with nectar and completely purified, clear as crystal. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya, help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Sri Akaruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Sri Akaruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sutsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Bhava Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sarasiti Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsantriya Kuruhum ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Justa Jedo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Justa Jedo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Drista Dredo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Mame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Drink frame. Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Danopa Justa Jedo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Bame Mansi Bajri Baba Ma Samaya Samaya Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Justa Dredo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Justa Jedo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Justa Jedo Me Baba Suto Kayo Me Baba Supo Kayo Me Baba Anuraktu Me Baba Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsan Triya Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Satwa Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriyakuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guruham Ha 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 O Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Kuruhong Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bajra Bame Mansa Bajri Baba Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa, Justadredo Me Bawa, Sutokayo Me Bawa, Supokayo Me Bawa, Nurektu Me Bawa, Sara Siddhi Me Prayata, Sara Karma Sutsume, Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan, Sara Tada Gata, Bajrabame Matsa, Bajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha, Om Bajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya, Vajrasattva Tanopa, Justadredo Me Bawa, Sutokayo Me Bawa, Supokayo Me Bawa, Anurektu Me Bawa, Zara Siddhi Me Prayata, Zara Karma Sutsume, Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ha Ho Bhagavan, Zara Tada Gata, Bajrabame Mansa, Bajri Baba Ma Samaya Zadwaha, Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Bajrabame Mansa Bajri Baba Maha Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Nurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Maha Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Nurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Nurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Nurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Nurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Justadredo Me Bawa Sutokayo Me Bawa Supokayo Me Bawa Anurektu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsume Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tada Gata Vajrabame Mansa Vajri Baba Ma Samaya Sadwaha Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Balaya Vajrasattva Danopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sudokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsu Me Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bhajra Me Matsa Bhajri Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Danopa Tristadredo Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsu Me Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bhajra Me Matsa Bhajri Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Danopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Nuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsu Me Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bhajra Me Matsa Bhajri Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Danopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Nuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsu Me Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bhajra Me Matsa Bhajri Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Danopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayata Sara Karma Sutsu Me Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bhajra Me Matsa Bhajri Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Danopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Nuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsu Me Sitsantriya Guru Hong Ha Ho Bhagavan Sara Tathagata Bhajra Me Matsa Bhajri Bhava Ma Samaya Sattva. Have a drink? Now the dissolution on page 89. I and all sentient beings, deluded by our ignorance, have broken the vows. O Lama, Vajrasattva, protector, holder of the Vajra, Lord of all sentient beings, please protect us. Vajrasattva is pleased by our prayers and replies. Your delusions are now cleared away and you are purified. Vajrasattva then dissolves into light and is absorbed into myself through the top of my head. I then become Vajrasattva. Meditate on the union of appearance and emptiness. We recite the dissolution in Tibet. Taksog mon pe dam le gyal gyur pe gompo kyab shik so wo dor jezen drowe so wo dagi kyab so chik dike so pe dor sam ge so ki Kyoki dik drib da go she jung te da gla tim pe drib pa chang war yor. I then become Vajrasattva. Meditate. Catch a glimpse of the Mahamudra. A mind peaceful in emptiness. We'll do a 5-minute meditation. We'll do 3 5-minute meditations. Take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale. Open your eyes. Stretch your arms. Stretch your torso. Take a drink if you need a drink, whatever you need. We'll do our second 5-minute meditation. Take a deep breath and hold it. Exhale. Hold the empty breath. Take a deep breath with fresh, clean, pure air. Expand your belly. Hold the breath. Breathe in with both nostrils. Exhale, stale, dark, negative air. Squeeze the abdomen, push against the lungs. Hold the breath. Breathe in again, watching fresh, clean, pure air coming in. Expand the belly and hold it. Exhale, squeeze the belly against the diaphragm, against the lungs. Stale, negative, dark air going out. Hold it. Stay relaxed and breathe normal. Visualize Vajrasattva's white nectar in your body, purifying all the negativities, confusion. Have remorse for bad deeds, for non-virtuous deeds. Use the remedy. Resolve not to continue the non-virtue. Rely on the practice to help you maintain your commitment. deep breath and hold it. Exhale. Okay, that'll be our meditation part for today. Now we recite the dedication on page 89. Through the virtue of this practice, may I achieve Vajrasattva's great realization. To this state may I come to lead every being, not one left behind. Ewa di nor dudai, dorje sampa drubyurne, drowa jikang malupa, di salago pasho. Okay. Thank you. That concludes the practice. We still have our dedications to do, but any comments or questions? Gavin, I'd like to check in with you. How did you enjoy today's talk? What do you think of the gatekeepers?
Maybe he's not hooked up.
Well, Gavin may not be there right now. Okay. Zara, how about you? We've talked about the idea of talking about the important elements, and emphasizing them. So this is what the gatekeepers are very good at being able to identify. So what did you think of this method to be able to introduce these four gatekeepers, these pairs
Oh,
of gatekeepers?
I loved it. I'm obviously in transit right now, admittedly. However, I like as you were talking about the four immeasurable qualities and then the directionality, like the way it would go clockwise, right? Like north, west, like the direction of the directions and where each one was symbolized and the family it belonged to. It really brought forth powerful visual imagery to me to help me make it more tangible in practice. And then as you were talking through like the practicality of handling different aspects of whatever obscuration or challenges, I was very connected to today's conversation with our lecture presentation, even though it was a little disjointed for me. It was very practical. Like, that's the best word. It was as you intended it to be. The effect was for me very like for me it was perfect. So thank you.
Thank you. Gary, what do you think? Did you find this helpful?
Yes, particularly, I guess, the parts about habitual tendencies and patterns that we get into. When we're in a practice like this, we're in kind of a protective realm in some way. But when we get out into the world, if others are anything like me, we let the world intrude in a way. And the things that we are trying to turn away from will grip us again. So the advantage of a practice like this is to bring us back to a kind of center, so that we can release the grip of those habitual tendencies and extreme views, and embrace the enlightened activities that we're supposed to be inculcating through this practice. That is probably a little messy way of explaining it, but that is reaches to what I'm getting from it.
Oh, that's very good. I like what you said, that we're protected when we're here in the meditation room,
Yes.
doing the practice, doing our study, but we need to learn how to take that protection with us when we get up off the cushion and go out into the world.
Life intervenes,
Yes.
and we become exactly who we don't want to be as we start to absorb all this stuff. I try to find a kind of a safe place to be aware. I think we need to be aware of everything that is going on without it defining us as people. You can't be impervious to samsara, to the world writ large. But you need to find a peace, a sense of quietude, and the remedies are here. But I like the term habitual tendencies, because most of course I have spent a lifetime, as long as you, of developing habitual tendencies and the sort of defined responses that we're supposed to have that really never work in life when it gets right down to it. It is not going to change, so we have to change the way we react to it, and this practice helps us to think about that at the very least.
That's very good. Thank you. Matt, would you like to comment about, you already did, I know, earlier talking about this, but is there anything more that you'd like to add to this discussion?
I don't know, maybe just second what Gary was saying. Yeah, that definitely resonated with me, Gary, what you were saying. Yeah, and understanding bit by bit these groups to more of the logic and the approach of Vajrayana, the Vajrayana path.
So yeah, because you brought up, the habitual tendencies, I want to, say that the gatekeepers are the characters, if you will. They're the enlightened ones of the habitual tendencies. They are the purification. They represent the recognition and the purification of the habitual tendencies. So we have both good, positive habitual tendencies and negative habitual tendencies. And that becomes that dance of life that I mentioned earlier. And not to get too technical about it, but these enlightened ones are called the Vidyadharas, the holy, the hero awareness holders, the hero awareness holders, that they recognize, they see what's going on and everything, and they can move to the vicissitudes, they can move to throughout all this and maintain their balance. So the four qualities that we talked about, the bodhicitta and the types of birth and so on, are means in which that we need to recognize those, because those are like the world in which we live in. So, and they are in the throat. This is in the throat. They are located in the throat. And the reason they're located in the throat is because the throat, the voice, is the speech of the Buddha. The speech of the Buddha. So it's the intellectualization. So it's the application of taking all these things and bringing them all together and making them our habitual tendencies, changing our speech. And we give ourselves away in what it is that we say and do. So if we're paying attention to our thoughts and our actions, the things that we say, it tells us where we are in our progress. And it shouldn't be something that say, oh, I made a mistake, I slipped or something like that, and feel bad about it. When you realize that, you should feel good about it because it's brought it to your attention And now you have something to work with. So that's an important part. So the emotions are worked in the heart. The emotions are worked in the heart. And this is where the main deities are. And then in the brain is where the wrathful, the fierce deities are. So we'll talk more about them and other discussions about the bardo and so on. But this is bringing the body, speech, and mind together and giving a little bit more clarity on where these, how this operates. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll recite our dedication prayer. So if you have your prayer book, we'll go to page 18. Dorje Chang, Talopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dormalorgam Popa, and Pagmadrupa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all the Kaju Lamas. By this virtue, may I achieve the all-knowing state, and may all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessing of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, Ah, Om. Om, Ah, Om. Om, Ah, Om. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much. All right, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow evening when we continue Buddhist Study 101, and thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Lance.
Take care, everyone.
Thank everybody online.